This has been a confusing offseason in a lot of ways for the Portland Trailblazers. And look, there's a lot that's going on right now. And I just it's so hard to wrap your head around. Think of the way that this offseason has played out.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we roll into the offseason, and one of the first announcements is both Joe Cronin and Chauncey Billups receive multi-year contract extensions. Okay. That one was, oh, okay, going with it. It assumed one or the other would be there.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them getting the multi-year extension was a bit surprising, but not too surprising.
I mean,
for us.
in December, there were thoughts that Chauncey could really be on the hot seat, and then the final 4.5 months of the season, they close it out, and that was enough for them to go, okay, we saw the progress we wanted to see and continue going forward with it.
And then the team goes for sale.
Mm-hmm.
And that one was we knew it was going to happen,
Just
but
a matter of when.
The timing of it was, oh, here it is now. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then you have Anthony Simons traded for Drew Holiday, changing the timeline of they said we want to run timelines where guys are the same age. You bring in a wily vet who's getting paid more than Anthony Simons, and you send 2 draft picks, albeit second rounders, along with Ant to Boston, and you get Drew Holiday in return. Then they draft a 5th center that many, not all, because we had Rafael Barlow on who had him mocked in the first round, that many had as a second round selection, and it's the 5th center on the roster brought in. And you're going, all right, at 16? Okay, all right. Then last night, the news by Shams is reported that the Portland Trailblazers are buying out the contract of DeAndre Ayton. Down to 4 centers now, but a guy on an expiring deal at $35 million. There are a few teams in the league, Phoenix not being one of them anymore, that are center needy and do not have a center. I think if you go around, you look at LA and you look at now Charlotte, because Charlotte traded Nurk
for a guard,
and they've traded Mark Williams,
and they traded previously Nick Richards.
So they don't have any bigs. Portland going all bigs, Charlotte going no bigs. Okay, but there are teams that are center needy, and you have an expiring deal that is usually attractive for DeAndre Ayton. Now it's $35 million this year for a guy that can check in, check out, but he was a 14-10 guy here last year for Portland. And he is going to be bought out, and the Blazers are going to be paying him not to play here, and the Blazers will get nothing in return. It's confusing.
So, the whole league sources have told me that the Blazers did not, in taking a spin around the league and trying to find a landing spot for DeAndre Ayton, they were not willing to take back money beyond this year. So that narrows the scope of transactions to other expiring deals. And if you're doing that, there's only so many teams that can have the necessary expiring or expirings that are under the second Abram, so they can aggregate salaries to make it make sense. So it was a very, very, very tight needle to thread. Now, whether you agree with that or not, in their process, over the last few months, the Blazers, in discussions I've had with team representatives, have very much prioritized the books going forward. And I know somebody's going, well, what about Drew? Immediately right now, there has been a caveat with Drew Holiday. And if you move out DA, you can now have another bigger deal on the books. And the other part of this is the Blazers don't have big deals on the books remaining other than JG. So you have to have the necessary level of salary to kind of not only meet the salary floor, but to facilitate all levels of transactions. And everybody gets it's like that. You have to, because if you don't have that, you can't make deals unless you're the Brooklyn Nets, who tried to have all that cap space going into this year. And what did they do with it? Did they land anybody? Did anybody big end up in Brooklyn? No. But now you have to scramble and take 5 draft picks and try to figure things out. And again, I'm not saying this is the best course of action, but that's the necessary part of the salary management, the contract management when you're in the NBA. Where this gets interesting is how much DeAndre Ayton gave up. I've heard unofficial numbers, and if the unofficial number that I have heard is correct, it would give the Trailblazers access to the full mid-level exception, which would get them above the, 15.2 or 14.2. I can never remember the machinations of it. Just the CBA just constantly changing is always one of those things. But if they want that, they now have that. They also, with not giving out the qualifying offer to Jabari Walker and very, 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 very unlikely retaining Delano Banton, puts him at 13 players with the ability to now in the offseason, you can do this anyways because rosters are bigger. I think you can have up to 21 going into camp. So the roster count doesn't really matter too much right now. But this does allow them to facilitate going into next season an unbalanced trade where they could send out 1 for 2 or 1 for 3 or something along those lines. If they don't use the money that was created here to either go get somebody else in free agency to help supplement the roster, or they don't make a trade over the next week, 10 days, and this is just that, I like this significantly less. And I understand why that they're looking at their books kind of going forward, because Tumani Kamara and Shaden Sharp are both extension eligible this year. Now, Two's deal is a player option for 26-27. The machination basically would turn into the Blazers would decline that option. They'd give him a new deal. It would start next year. Basically 4 years, $89+ million. But we also just saw Jabari Smith Jr. re-sign from the same class as Shaden Sharp for roughly $24.5-25 million a year. Are you comfortable right now saying that you want to give Shaden Sharp that deal?
No.
So you want to have some flexibility in your books going forward, because that's just two in Shaden. Next year, Scoot becomes eligible for his extension, being drafted a year after Shaden. All right, so now you're kind of looking at that. And as you start looking at their books going forward, it does look very good, but I'm starting to wonder if there's something else here, because if there's not something else here, it just gave them some flexibility now. And I know some people are like, well, what about ownership? And I'm like, they just traded for a $34 million a year guy in Drew Holiday. I don't think this is an ownership thing, because they weren't going to go in the tax anyways, unless a deal that was just so incredible came across their desk, because they're not at the competitive level where you want to trigger that yet.
Well, there's also a few things here in that the Portland Trail Blazers in the past have stretched contracts out, and which means that you agree to a buyout like this, you stretch it out over multiple years.
Yes, and that is a deal this big that's a lot of dead money.
And they've done that before.
Andrew Nicholson, Anderson Varejao.
But is that going to happen where that money then counts against you, albeit in smaller chunks over the course of multiple years? Or do they take it in one big chunk to, and if they take it in a big chunk, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's, if it's $30 million or if it is, $15 million, mm-hmm. whatever it is, that money goes against you this year.
Yeah, and you have the capacity to float it this year. So why inhibit your books going forward if your priority is the books because of X, Y, or Z? The issue for me comes out
books are also important for a sale of a team.
Sure, but I don't look at that as that being a part of this, because they did just bring in another player, and they do have players that are going to get very sizable raises if they do keep them. So that part of it. Now, even with the whole sale of the team in the back of my head, that stuff doesn't, the books don't impact, from the governors that I've talked to about this stuff in general. Books and players on the roster can be additive bonuses or added negatives, but we're talking microscopic.
It doesn't
levels.
Stop people from wanting to be ownership in the NBA.
It does not in any way, shape, matter, or form. Can it be like, hey, we've got Luka Doncic on our books now in his prime? Is that a nice little bullet point that you put on the PowerPoint? Sure, but you're looking at the total value of the Los Angeles Lakers in general, and not what your books are or aren't. So that part of it, I'm not too concerned about. But if they don't do something else with this space that was created, if there's not another transaction or not something that sets up something else, then I scratch my head a little bit. And I understand the ability and the willingness to. You have the opportunity to eat that money right now, so it's just better to just do it right now and not worry about it. And people wondering about going to the trade deadline, if you take DA to the trade deadline and then you try to do this, and let's say you find another expiring, well, your salaries are prorated. So through 2/3 of the season, you've already paid him 2/3 of his salary, depending on how I'm assuming his salary breakout is a normal monthly or bi-month or twice a month payment. Guys have front-loaded, back-loaded payment schedules that are a little bit weird. Without knowing the microscopic of DA, I'm going to assume he's a standard contract where he gets paid twice a month like most people in the NBA. Then 2/3 of roughly of his salary is already gone out, and the most you could buy out is the remaining. The other part of that is because DA would have already earned over $14.1 million, he would not be free to sign with any second apron team.
Okay.
That's a part of the new CBA. So you allow DA to go to another team, and in a prove-it year, you don't. It's not about not irritating DA. Bill Duffy is a very, very, very prolific and powerful agent, and you don't necessarily want to irk him for that just because you wanted to lord that over them.
Okay, there's a few things that we need to get to here. They have said, and Chauncey's been vocal about this, they're trying to be competitive this year. They do have 5 centers on the team, but the most productive center is a guy that you're paying to go away.
Mm-hmm.
So why not try to keep him for this year? And even if he walks away next year and you don't get anything for him without trading him, you have a more productive player than what you have had on the roster right now.
Mm-hmm.
That is a legitimate question, and I want to get to that because if there is not another deal that they're working on and is in place and this is it, boy, this does not sit well.